Number 9 here. We've got a lot of racing news this week. A little more than normal. I got quite a few things here. I don't know if I'm going to cram them all into this one or save some. Olympic test event, RedBull Beyond the Line, episode 2 was released. Some OKK Huttwil, however you pronounce it, was a great race. And we got some couple of weird new things coming out for changing gears, and some cool stuff about for the old school 1991 World Championships. I noticed a couple kind of cool things. With all that, let's go.
This is Short Travel Magazine.
Short Travel Magazine.
Racing news and views.
All right, let's get going right away here. Lots of things going on. The Olympic test event, which Vanderpool says he's going to do. I'm not hearing much chatter about this at all, and it's only a week away. So interesting things. Of course, it's in France where the Olympics will be next year. They're going to have a men's and a women's race, and it's going to be crammed in between Liège, which is this weekend, and the Snowshoe, West Virginia. So this has been one heck of a busy summer, I think, for the pros out there. That's a lot of things to keep track of. So it's called Elencourt. I don't know how to speak French. You'll have to excuse me. I really stink at that. But it's 231 meters, so the highest point would be what is that? Roughly 1,000 feet, which is the highest point in the Paris region, which is interesting. It's not very high, let's be honest, 1,000 feet. I mean, it's higher than anything I have in Illinois here in the U.S., but still, this is not going to be a altitude race where people need to go spend a week in Andorra or somewhere. So they also claim to not be changing or building any major buildings or infrastructure. Their whole goal is to leave it as close to intact as it is. So that's kind of cool. And they said all of the Nick Floros is the designer, South African trail builder. And they're going to base the whole thing as 95% on existing trails. So that's actually kind of cool. I'm assuming we're not going to get a bunch of weird man-made fake rock drop-offs and jumps over fake ponds. And I don't particularly like that stuff a whole lot. I like the natural roots and rocks and stuff like that. But they're going to leave the trails, of course, when they're done. They're not, but it is built near a site of a former sandstone quarry. So I wonder what the type of, a quarry sandstone could be very loose, not very, loamy. I don't know. Be interesting to see what happens. 15 to 20,000 capacity for people, for guests to watch. That's kind of cool. So I don't know. I didn't look if anybody's going to actually. I mean, I'm assuming GCN Plus and the usual World Cup, video team is going to be there. I don't know. They're not really saying. I have to go look that up. But that's something I would love to see, kind of how that goes. If you remember last Olympics, Yolanda in Japan won the test event and then came out and won the actual event, which to me is kind of, they were quite a couple months apart, the test event, maybe more, 6 months like this one. So I don't know. Quite interesting to see what happens. Maybe Vanderpool comes out, kicks everybody's butt, and says to himself, "Hey, I'm good to go. I don't need to race like old Tom Pidcock has been doing, showing up 2-3 races a year. Interesting. So let's keep an eye out for that. If I find out for sure who's going to be showing that, I will mention it next week. Also, the old rumor mill, not rumor mill, I guess, Luca Schwartzpower as people call him. I had a blog post basically telling everybody to shut up, quit telling him how he's supposed to race. The fact that he goes out too fast and doesn't sit back and wait behind others, kind of like Pidcock seems to do, seems like the smarter move. I mean, Avancini was guilty of that too. He'd just go out full speed, get gobbled up within a lap or two, and then end up about where he would traditionally have ended up if he just kind of chilled. I don't know. Interesting. But he said, hey, this is how I do it. And until you can ride a mile in my shoes, shut up. Okay, I may have paraphrased all that quite a bit. That's how I took it. So kind of cool to see somebody like that just tell people to mind their own business. This is how he does it. I mean, these guys having a heck of a last 2 years here, considering he was not even remotely on the radar 2 years ago. Nobody had ever heard of him. He just kind of showed up and was already, you could tell, already kind of ready to go, ready to start kicking butt. So I'm a fan in case you didn't notice that. So good for him. What else? The Red Bull show with Emily Batty and Rob Warner. And honestly, I cannot remember the downhiller guy's name. Episode 2, when it first came out, I watched it. I thought, oh, what a perfect venue for, an Emily Batty type person to have at her disposal, where she can, she certainly has the experience and has been around the block. So I kind of had high hopes for it. Like everybody else, I like Rob Warner. I just like his voice. I like his excitement. So I thought it would be kind of cool. And now the second one has just been released, and I don't know. It's not grabbing me. I'm giving it a 5 out of 10 rating. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I just don't. The problem with them sharing time talking about cross country and downhill, to me, just does not. I don't want to hear any of the downhill stuff. I mean, it's mildly interesting once in a while, a few things, but I don't know. They're just, to me, they're so separate, these two factions of the sport, that I don't know. It just bores me. I have no idea what the accolades are of the downhiller guy, the host. I mean, he's obviously been around. He knows everybody. He's raced. But I don't know how successful it was. I don't know. If it was like a Loic Bruni or somebody doing this, that dude, for some reason, I like to kind of follow him. The only reason I actually check in, I do check the results after the downhill finals, just because I'm looking for Finn Isles and Loic Bruni. Those are the only two guys that I kind of know. I recognize a lot of the other names, but they don't really register with me. And a couple of the women, for some reason I like Tawny Seagrave. I like her name. I know that's stupid. And of course, Rachel Atherton is cool. But I just wish I've tried to watch it over the years. Not like I've never watched it. So I don't know. That show, Beyond the Line, it's cool that they're trying to keep doing some mountain bike stuff without showing the actual World Cups. They're obviously giving them access to things. They're on site. I don't know. I'm gonna give it a couple more episodes. I'll probably still watch it because I'm always looking for stuff to watch. But that just didn't do it for me. The first 2 episodes. If it disappeared, I don't think I would be sad. That's that. Let's talk about Sam Gaze for a minute. I know on a forum I kind of started some crap about him bailing on the World Cups to go race the Vuelta, because his statement about it was that his coach and him both agreed that would be a good thing to have in the legs for next year's Olympics, which I was arguing, and again, I don't know what I'm talking about half the time. It seemed like an awful long way away to be worrying about getting through a 3-week race now in September, August and September of this year. That's somehow going to change his body's ability to hold training 6-7 months from now. I don't know. So I was kind of shocked when he quit the race after just a week out of the 3-week race. Fatigue and illness and all that type of thing. He said he was just empty. And, these are human beings here we're talking about. I can only imagine if you're not feeling well, absolutely no reason to keep going and hurt yourself. But every time Van der Poel especially, every time they do these things where it's almost like, you can't plan ahead almost that far. You just can't. I mean, look what happened to Van der Poel in Japan for the last Olympics. He was the big guy going in there, put all his eggs in one basket, boom, done, out, finished, first lap. World champs this year, of course. I'm just going to show up and kick everybody's butt. Boom. Didn't happen. So for Sam Gay, I thought, you'd be better off just racing the World Cups. If you're worried about your mountain biking abilities next year for the Olympics in the mountain bike race, then why focus on doing a road race? I don't know. I really wish somebody could explain for real, not just hyperbole, but what good that really did him. Would he not have... He could probably win the overall this year at the way he's been racing for the World Cup. So that ain't going to happen now, and I'm pretty sure he's not going to show up this weekend. And I haven't seen anything about him going to Snowshoe or Canada now that the Vuelta's out. So who knows? We may not see him again at all the rest of this year in the mountain bike world. And let's go on one last thing I'd like to mention him in the racing world. OKK Huttwil. The OKK series is Switzerland only. In case you didn't know, I say only meaning it's in Switzerland. It's basically a really cool local race series that Red Bull is kind enough to actually put on their site for free, just like they did the World Cups with Rob Warner, no less, and Jose Hermida as the commentators. So no problems with that. And of course, a lot of the Swiss are there. Not all of them. Nino wasn't there. I don't think, Yolanda wasn't there. But still, many of them. Courtney was there. And that's kind of cool. I think Christopher Blevins was too. So we actually had a couple Americans racing in this series. This was the last one in Huttwil. You can watch it. It's a good race. I mean, Courtney, I think, looked better than probably she has in a couple years. She stayed with, what's her name? Okay, from Thomas. She stayed with Alessandra Keller a lap or two, and then Keller took off. But still, she ended up in second, and I don't know, looked kind of like her old self. But that's not what I really wanted to talk about. I mean, you can watch that and see all that yourself. But she mentioned that she stays at her boss's house, Thomas Frischkeneck. She actually stays at his house while she's over there in Switzerland. And that's kind of cool. Right, so I'm assuming that's why she's doing these local Swiss races. Also, that she's good friends with Keller, Alessandra Keller, and she's actually they were gonna drive, that she's staying at her house for a few days. Now that's kind of cool. And then they're going to drive together to the World Cup this weekend. I don't know how long of a drive it is from Switzerland to France, but again, I don't know. I thought that was really cool that they're kind of intertwined, two separate teams. It's not a team thing. It's just like a friendship type of a thing. So that's pretty darn cool. I wonder if other people kind of do that. If certainly the Americans, I have to stay somewhere over there. Is Gwendolyn Gibbons staying with only their Trek teammates over there, or I don't know, kind of cool. I thought I could just kind of picture that in my head, having these two world-class racers staying together, kind of just as friends and hanging out and then driving to the race together. That's cool. So that's enough for now, I think. Of course, we have the short track coming up this Friday in a couple days, and then the race on Sunday. Been kind of a weird post World Champs vibe, and I cannot make any predictions whatsoever. I'm not even going to bother. I can't imagine who's going to win, but it's going to should be pretty good. If it's dry, PFP is probably going to give that one a go, and I don't see why she wouldn't be considered the favorite by far. So, all right, let's move on to some tidbits.
Interesting tidbits. Curated just for you.
All right, just some quick tidbits here. There's some photos going around that Alan Hatherley, Cannondale, had a wireless earpiece in, like the road dudes do, so that he could communicate. I don't know if it's a two-way thing or if only he can hear his coach or director giving him information. And if you look, I mean, they are technically not legal radios in cross country. But the odd thing is, it says unless approved with the UCI. Now, why that would be, it's like either let everybody do it or you don't. I have no idea what the thinking is with this approval. But anyway, there is a photo, and I never noticed it. He actually had the little earpiece in with a piece of tape on his ear, just like you see. It's kind of a blurry photo, but I don't know. I think it said short track. He had it. Now, that seems kind of weird. Isn't that kind of all happening right in front of you? Why you would maybe need somebody telling you something? I don't know. But that's interesting, and it kind of bums me out because I can imagine here coming up in the next few years, I can't see any good reason why the UCI wouldn't say, yeah, go ahead. And then everybody starts putting radios in their ear, and everybody knows now exactly where everybody is instantly. And I don't know. I kind of like going. I almost wish we went backwards and had no tech zones like the old days, and you bring your own repair tools. Certainly no radios. Carry your own water, stuff like that. I'm just an old grump. So look for that to start ramping up. I'm guessing once one person does it and has some success, everybody's going to start wanting to do it. Lots of talk about hardtails like Canyon and Pinarello, of course, and Cervelo. They're all putting out these super light carbon hardtails. And I know very few people, mainly on the women's side, have been using them. I just don't get it. Seems like that ship has sailed. Now, they're cool to use as kind of pseudo gravel bikes. But at a World Cup level, I just don't see the point. So I'll be curious. Like every year I keep wondering, when is these companies going to just start not building them anymore? So I don't know. Somebody must be buying them. Yeti, of course, maybe you didn't hear, is now selling consumer direct. There's a bit of a big conversation over on MTBR about this. I didn't really think it was that big a deal, but apparently it kind of is, and I'm curious as to what other people think about buying. I mean, the cheapest Yeti I would imagine is $5,000 to $8,000. I guess it could apply to any bike. I mean, Specialized, Trek, they all do something direct now. Canyon, of course, and the like are only direct. But I've even considered, now, would I drop $10,000 on a bike with never having thrown a leg over it? I would, I guess. But I would much prefer to go somewhere and actually not try the exact bike necessarily, but certainly the exact size. Maybe a build level down or two, so I could at least get on the thing. And I don't know. But I guess you're just going to see more and more and more of this. I mean, these companies have to do whatever they have to do, but just seems kind of weird. Of course, I don't know any Yeti dealers here in Illinois. It's been so many years since I even thought about Yeti. They don't even make a true cross-country race bike at all. I haven't for decades, so for me, that's not even a brand on my radar. But we'll see. I'm assuming everybody's going to do that eventually. What else was interesting? Sepp Kuss, old Sepp. Anybody watching the Vuelta road races? Not too much excitement there from a mountain biking point of view. However, does anybody know Sepp Kuss, Colorado, of course. Seems like everybody's from Colorado still. He actually was a mountain biker. He won the Collegiate Mountain Bike Champs in 2014 and 2015, both years, cross country. So he'd be a cool, he's kind of built like a pidcock. He's ridiculously thin and slender. He can climb like crazy. And if he was already good on a mountain bike, he's never going to do it. He's a top lieutenant right now on the road. But it'd be kind of cool to see him pop in and try a mountain bike race or two, even just in the U.S. And, a Leadville. And I don't know, has he ever done a Leadville? I don't remember ever seeing his name being mentioned. Maybe someday he'll do that once he gets kind of down the line. Kind of pull like a Levi Leipheimer or a Lance and all the road guys. Just kind of give Leadville a whirl. I bet he could do quite well with his engine and climbing ability. So that's kind of cool. And one last thing on the tidbits. Did you know that cross-country marathon, as a format, has the most participants throughout the world of all the cross-country racing formats? So the short track and Olympic distance. There's more people racing marathon format in events than those other ones. And that to me was surprising because I don't even have any marathon events around. I don't even know where I would go in the U.S. for such a thing. I believe this year in Alabama they are having a marathon world. I believe. Maybe I'm confusing that with the gravel world. So there you go. Marathon is kind of the thing. That's actually going to be a factor in my let's talk about the old school. There's something there I noticed. So let's get into changing gears quickly and then wrap it up with the old school. Here we go.
Changing gears. More new stuff we don't really need.
Amen to that. Speaking of things we don't need, let's talk about oversized pulleys. I keep seeing these things popping up. A new company has got some out. They're $200 to $400 for these. Call me nuts, stupid products. Now, I like cool trick stuff. I'll be the first one to blow money on things that I don't really need. But I just don't see how these oversized pulley things make any sense. Now, if you need new pulleys, yours are worn out, which, I've rode on one set of pulleys for 15 years and they still work fine. Would I dump more money into pulley cage than the whole direct? No, I wouldn't do it. I don't get it. I just don't think they're that critical of a part on your bike that requires you to go outside of what SRAM and Shimano or TRP or anybody else who's making rear derailleurs, what they put on there. If there was some giant, huge, ridiculous advantage, don't you think they'd want in on that money and just make them giant, oversized so that nobody has to blow any money on some third-party unit? I don't know. Call me crazy, but they keep popping up. People are apparently, if you're a company, you want to make quick buck, those don't look to be terribly sophisticated pieces of bike equipment. But I could be wrong. More power to whoever wants to make this stuff. One thing I did notice, gear-wise, is that people are still, many people in the cross-country World Cup are running HT pedals. They're not running, if you're not a Shimano-sponsored rider, of course, although some of them still run SPDs, a few. Maybe they don't have that rigid of a contract with the SRAM. But for the most part, the SRAM guys have to go find some other pedals. So Crank Brothers, I think, is what Yolanda uses. But everybody, and I saw this in 19 when I was in Snowshoe, and I was really walking through the pits, looking at everybody's bikes, and I was just shocked at how many people had these HT pedals, usually the shiny rainbow titanium axle versions. I mean, everybody had them. And I got to thinking, that is an area that SRAM really needs to kind of think about. They should buy HT and just be done with it. They did buy, what did they buy, Time or Look pedals? I don't remember. Very few people I see are actually using them. I'm assuming they bought them more for the power meter or maybe the roadside, or they must have got a deal on them. But they have not, either way, they have not pushed their mountain bike pedals very hard. I mean, they don't really, if they came out with all new ones, call them, SRAM power pedals or something, that would be kind of cool. But it seems like a missing opportunity since they have everything else with the drivetrain and the forks and through Zip, the wheels, and through Truvative and through Avid. They have almost everything going, so why not tackle the pedals? So SRAM, go buy HT. I know it's a Taiwanese company. They're probably not for sale. But come out with some pedals. Then these people can start pushing that. What else? The Mondraker F Podium, the bike that Rebecca Henderson and Andre Sink ride, which personally I think is one of the ugliest looking mountain bikes I've ever seen. I know, I'm an idiot. Looks don't matter. Thing looks way too long and weird to be fully functional. Obviously, I'm full of crap because there's plenty of great results on that bike, but they have a new one coming out. I believe it's tomorrow, I think, or is it next week? But keep an eye out for that. It looks really similar, but some weird things going on around the shock area. So I'll be kind of curious to see how that turns out. So look on that. You can find it on some of the social media sites. I'll let you know what I think about that. Mainly because I always thought they sounded French or something. That's a Spanish company. And just in general, there's some really, really cool Spanish mountain bike brands. Beria, BH, Massey, is that how you say it? There's a crapload of really cool bikes with Spanish origins that we don't get here, but are all over the World Cup and all over Europe. So, I don't know. Kind of thought that was interesting. They've got such a huge, why that one country has so many brands that other countries don't seem to have. So I'm going to keep an eye out for that. And I guess we'll wrap that up. I have a few things I'll save till next week. Let's do some old school talk and then we'll call it a day.
Let's talk about the old school.
Yes, let's talk about the old school. All right, 1991, the year I first found mountain bikes and racing. World Champs, YouTube. Check it out. They lined everybody up. All the big names were already there. Tomac, Frischknecht, he was already, in 91, already at the top. One of the kind of the few Euros who were already heavily invested in the Norba series. But just a couple things I find interesting about the old school. First of all, they have the tape across from left to right, holding everybody back. Right before they said go, they just, now you see the guy walking from one side of the start area to the other, kind of rolling up the tape. They just held the tape up over their head, and everybody went under the tape. Seems extremely weird. Nobody really nailed it. Nobody stood up far enough to hit their heads on the tape. But I thought that's kind of weird. I know that's stupid. But here's the best part. The winning time, I believe Tomac won, and Frischknecht ended up in second. Okay, you ready for this? The winning time, this is cross country, 2 hours, 38 minutes. That's right. 2.5 hours. That's just for the winner. So we're looking at easily 3 hours for most people for a cross-country race. And what are they now? Oh, 1 hour 15. And like That's the max. You get to an hour 25, and that seems like a long race. So 2 hours, 38 minutes. At the beginning of our sport, that was cross-country mountain biking. So think of how vastly different that is now. Now they have to give that a whole nother name. Nobody even watches it. Now can you realistically sit there and watch on TV a 2.5 hour race? No, probably not. In fact, the coverage was, of course, all chopped up. You kind of see the first lap, and then they would just kind of zip around and then end with the last half a lap. But just the same, it just is a reminder kind of how things have gone. I mean, think about short track. We're down to 20 minutes now for a rate. What are they going to have, a short track where it's literally like a 7-minute loop? Now, the funny thing is, when I started in 91, they actually did have a shorter race. They had a hill climb at every race I went. They would just pick the biggest hill and started everybody at the bottom, all together as a group, and everybody hauled butt to the top of the hill. It would be like 5-6 minute climb, winner take all. I was terrible at climbing, so I never really, I did them just because you're already paying. You could just pay to do downhill, cross country, hill climb, and a trials. They had a deal where cross country guys, you didn't use a special bike. You just used your bike, and you had to get through this trials course. You had 4 events, all included in one weekend race price. So I did that for several years, and then they started dropping all that away. So there you go. Frischknecht, second place in 91. He was already that good. And it was 2 hours and 38 minutes. Think about that. That's just a regular cross-country race. It's amazing that so many amateurs actually took up the sport back in the 90s when it really did require serious length and commitment to get around these racetracks. So that's kind of cool. That should about do it for now. I say let's wrap this up. Of course, next week we're going to stick with once a week here and see how Leger goes. And a couple other new things I got dreaming up. So fat bike season here in Illinois is starting to creep up. So I may get that out and start kind of getting used to that bike again. All right, that's it. Have a good weekend. Talk to you next week.
Thank you ever so much for listening to Short Travel Magazine.